I'm doing a refinement of a case where posterior extrusion just didn't deliver. Extrusion isn't the only tricky movement out there, and I've been exploring different ways to handle these less predictable ones. In this video, I'll show you how I am approaching posterior extrusion this time, and I'm combining the dull effect with frog staging after the standard protocol from another brand fell flat. So I have to bring them into proper contacts and overcorrect with extra hard contacts. And the aligner push there. What's going to happen? That tooth is just going to move inside. Upper arch, front, roll it over to the occlusion, to the back. The case that I'm doing here today is a review of a case that has been designed. It's up for approval, but I know I'm not going to approve it yet. There's some things that I have to still work out how I'm going to manage that. And that specifically is the open bite at the back. If you look at the occlusal contacts, there's hardly 2 teeth, 3 teeth, maybe the touch. And the teeth aren't in contact at the back, so I have to close the bite. But first, I do a quick scan, a quick review. And the way that I always do my review, every time I open a case, I've got a certain set of steps. It just helps me to get closer to the end that I can approve a case. So what I do is first of all, I do what I call a bird's eye view. And when I do the bird's eye view, I do it from, when I do it, I do an eagle eye view from very far. And I start with the upper arch, then the lower arch. So I'm going to do now the upper arch. So to do that, I clean the slate as far as possible. I will remove the bottom arch. I will remove the attachments that I can see the minimum of things on the screen to distract me. So then, once I've got this clean picture, I start looking at it from the frontal view. And I will check, what do I see on the right-hand side? How does it compare to the left-hand side? Symmetry-wise, is it the same width? And then I look at the buccal surfaces. How do they fit? So I'll turn it to that side and I check the inclination of the 7, 6, 5, 3. She's got 1 premolar missing, so let's just go from the front again, upper arch only, and I will roll it. 7, 6, 6 to the premolar, premolar to the canine, and then we go into the transition. I'll do the same for the other side. I roll it from the 7 to the 6. There's maybe a slight, see, less from the premolar than from the canine. So I will, that's the difference. I have to go to the start. So let's go to the start and I look again at the right-hand side. Let me get rid of the interproximal stripping, clean slate. 7, 6, 5, or premolar, and 3. And I roll it. And I would like to have the same amount of tooth structure showing. It's more or less there. I feel there's more that shown of the 7 than the 6. 7 than if I look at the 6 to the 3 or to the premolar. So I'm going to take it in slightly, go back there, and then I start getting into a more similar look. And I'll do that same for the other side, and I look at the 7, 6, 5. I see a slight variance there, and I'll bring the 5 or the premolar out slightly. 7, 6, 5, canine. Now in this case specifically, if you look at the transition from the premolar to the canine, the buccal surface aren't the same. And one have to take into account the buccal surface of the teeth. They aren't always exactly the same. And some canines are just as rounded as the premolars, and then you want an even transition. This canine has got quite a bulky area there close to the gingiva and on that side as well. So I can't really, if I have to make that plane be similar to that plane, I'm not going to get it there. So let's just take that movement back. Secondly, I can maybe bring the tooth down, and there I've got the same contour, but that is totally not the way that a canine is. That's way too long. So let's take it back. So in this sense here, I haven't got the same contour contour, and the other reason is the patient complained from the start she didn't like the canine showing more of its edge there. In her initial bite, the canine and the laterals were slightly overlapping, so she wasn't that much aware of the canine. And in the straightening them out, it made this canine much more visible, and she complained. So I'm trying to hide that for her slightly. And that's something that you can't do with aligners. You can't do this individual tooth movements and make a bite fit to an individual request. With braces, you put on the braces and the wire moves the teeth. That's what I love about aligners. You can work on each individual tooth movement without affecting the others around it much. Okay. But then the important thing is to let your right hand and your left-hand side look the same, with this canine tucked in more than I would normally have done and slightly shorter. I overcorrected the bottom one to make sure that I do get a proper contact for canine disclusion there. This side is improvement on this side, but that one is worn away there. Okay, but let's go back to bird's eye view. Okay, make sure I'm in the final setup and I've got the left-hand side similar to that. Frontal view, and I will also roll it slightly like that. Then I will start looking at the occlusal planes. There I see a nice curve of the cusps, and I see it less on this side. I've got a problem there. And there I can see there's a marginal ridge height difference, which I have there as well. I'm going to have to address that. And on that side, although that contact is not bad, that one is maybe over extruded, so let's get the contact points on the same line. Let's go to the front and look at the upper arch only, and I swing it around again, and now I get a much more simple view, or similar view, sorry, on the palatal buccal cusp than I have on this side. I feel there is still a transition there that's not good. So let's see what is going on there. And this transitions to my next view. I look at it bird's eye view from the front, and as I roll, I go over into my occlusal view, which is actually the next one. So you can't totally separate them. They are linked to each other. So let's just see that we get them similar. I would like to do something like that. Let's just check the flow there. Somehow that cusp and that one, that's where I... There I now get, and that's where that one is lacking. I'm either going to have to do that, because there I've got a flat cusp, but then it's... I have to get this tooth in the right position. That have to go back to give me a smooth line of occlusion there. And I've got a... Okay, let's see now. From the front top only, and let's swing it around. I don't like that, what I see there. Wrong one. Something is coming right here. There we go. But swinging it around, I've got much more open occlusal planes there than on this side. This one is not right yet, so let's get it there. Now I have to decide which side is the better one. More cusp there than on that side, and I like to look at it from the back. And that is the curve of Monson, so let's evaluate. View from the back, top only, and let's roll it there. I actually like this side, so let's check it from the front. And now this look weird with that root in there. It's important to understand if you visualize roots like this. The roots is an animation of an animation. I didn't add a CBC to CBCT. So these roots are drawn from the shape of the crown, and then they add the roots. And you can't rely on the position of the roots per se. You have to see the root as just an indication of where they are, and as you start moving the tooth, how much the root is going to move, but it's not a real visualization of the root. So I'd rather, the crown is definitely the crown, so I can work on the crown shape, but the root, I disregard it. The only reason or the only time when I look at the root is when I want to see how much root movement take place, and then I look at it relative from the beginning to the end, but not at the actual root position. So, that said, let's have a look at the buccal inclinations. That one needs to pick up slightly to be in line with those, and let's see what happens. And then these line up much nicer. So there you can see that root seems to be much further in, but that root is not true. Okay, back at bird's eye view from the front. I sit with occlusal plane height differences, so let's just check that. Going there, canine, canine. Now I can see that 5, or that premolars on that line, that one needs to go up. Wrong tooth. That one needs to go up. And let's restore the view and double check and make sure that we move down. Now I've got the premolars on the same line, and I'm going to the 6s, they're on the same line, and I'm going to the 7s. And where are they on the line? That one I can see much less of it, so I have to get the symmetry right, and there I am. I think it looks good. What one can do, the roots, everything that you see creates a picture and it draws your eyes away from it. So what I will do sometimes like that, when I'm not convinced the roots are at the right place, I will remove that. I remove all the things and create distractions. So let's get rid of the grit, let's get rid of the roots, let's add the gums, and let's have a look at it then. And what I see is that from that canine to that premolar is a huge step which is not present there. Okay, here's the thing. I've completed my eagle eye view from very far, and I can see there's something that's off. If I look at the canines, I see the same amount of exposure of them, and then on the right-hand side, 4, 5, and 6 is a problem. So let's have a look at the occlusal view, right-hand side, and I can see it there. That's maybe a problem. So yeah, I remember. I've put these canines, I've brought them slightly into the palate because the patient don't want to see them hanging there. But there I've got a smooth transition from the canine to the premolar, and there's a huge step. So I'm going to have to bring that in as well. That may helps. And then let's bring the grid in and let's see what happens. Midline, let's look at the, keep the midline on that line, get the 3s, 4s there. And I'm 1, 2, 3.5 over, and I'm 1, 2, 3, 4. That one can still go in more. One, 2, 3 and a bit. There's a difference. If I look at the canine, it runs on that line, and that one is already further in. So I'm going to have to fix this. I'm going to have to bring that one out slightly. Now I'm 1 block and I'm 1 block, but that comes from take that in the middle, and I get that where those two thicker lines cross-sex there, the tip just slightly to the front, 1 block further, and that one is not. And I can see more of this buccal surface than I can of that one, so that one is going to have to tilt over and move slightly out to be symmetric. The 2, 3 cusp tip, much more equal now. Okay, so I've made this side wider, but now it's not behind the lateral, and that's what bucked the patient. Let's see. Then my problem comes from the laterals. Then I'm not on the same. There we go. So that lateral is wider, and from the mesial to the distal is wider than that one. That's why I'm battling with getting the canines on the same position. Okay, so let's see how can we solve that problem. If I go to the distal tip there, on that line, I'm going to have to bring that one in, Not an easy solution here, so I'm just going to try to get it more or less symmetric. If I look at the canines, there I am symmetric. Let's do it like this. And swing this one in again. 1 line, 1 line. Bring this one in, bring it in. I feel I'm wider there than there, so let's just check that. So at the widest part of the premolar, that cusp is furthest over to that side, so let's swing it in slightly, and going to have to close all these little gaps, or I'm not going to be able to get it symmetric or at the right places. Not too bad out of line. It's wide on the 1, 2, 3. Then I'll get the cusp tips. 1, 2, 3. I am. Let's go to the distal. The 6 there. I'm gonna swing it bit more symmetry, bring that tooth forward. Look at the distal of the 1/6, it's different angulation, so I'm going to have to rotate this one more. Just get a clean slate, clean out everything. The embouchure between the teeth are supposed to follow the same contour, and it's not, the contact point is not on the occlusal line, it is to the buccal side of it, so that is for me a good contact point there. That maybe not, so I'm going to swing that in slightly to get a better contact point. See what happened when I took away that? It pushed those teeth forward, and I don't want it. I want these to go back. So that's why I manually move it one by one. Otherwise, the software algorithm remove it to a side where I don't want it. Oh, come on. There we go. And then this one. There we go. That's not the way that I want it. There we go. Okay. Let's start from the front. There's something anatomical, something that's different on the tooth surface there. I don't know what it is. So let's just focus there and make that. There we go. Get that tooth. And as I said with other, the individual tooth movement that I can do with aligners, I can't do with fixed braces. The aligners are definitely superior. And the contact point which I create between the 6s and 7 never works in fixed braces. Because you've got so much saliva, you've got the cheeks there, you've got glue there, you've got brackets that comes off. So to position that bracket on the 7 in the perfect place. We've done that for years. We've got a good, relatively a good position. But since we've been doing aligners and we look at the cases on the screen like they are here, we're doing micro-orthodontics. And this is one of the points where micro-orthodontics really come into play. Quick interruption. If you found this video helpful this far, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more content just like this. So let's check it out there. And let's do it from the front again and roll it over. I'm still not happy, but I know eventually I'm going to change the contact. So for the time being, let's just leave it as that is. So bird's eye view from the front, roll it over to the occlusion, and then you do the occlusal side. That's what I did now for the upper arch. Now I'm going to the bottom arch. From the front, bird's eye view, clean everything, clean your slate as clean as possible, and look at it. There I've got already I can see a huge difference in my occlusal contact, so I'm going to have to highlight and put that there and see heavy contacts, less heavy, not as heavy on the left and the right. And I'm looking at a marginal ridge difference there, so I want it equal, so I'm going to extrude there and get nice and heavy. Now, in terms of heavy contacts in your final product, it's from case to case, it depends what you want. In this case, I've got an open bite at the back, and that's my problem. This is my 4th refinement that I'm planning now, and I still have an open bite at the back. So I have to bring the teeth together. Vertical movement is difficult with aligners, so I can't just bring them into very light contacts. I have to bring them into proper contacts and overcorrect with extra hard contacts. And this is what we're seeing here. So that even that one is, I'm going to over extrude and make it harder. And this one much harder, much more contacts than I've got there. And that's maybe a little bit too much, so let's see. Distribution of the red in total surface more or less the same. So let's remove that and let's just look at it from the front. And I've still got a problem. The 6 and the 7s may be the same. The 6s, I think this one needs to come up. Yeah, because I can see the lingual. I can't see the lingual of that one. Wrong, sorry. Let's look at it from the lingual view. So much is revealed from the lingual view. Now I can see why I see more of that one than from that one. The cusp height difference on the premolar on the right-hand side is less than the cusp height there. So I just want to check the view from the front and see my roll and my roll. Do I have the same contour? No, that one. Do I have the same contour there than there? And there's a difference in the tooth size. So one can't always have everything right. There's a bit of recession. So it's relative. You have to use your judgment. So there's a bigger tooth there than that one. I think her extractions may have been a 4 on this side because you get a more even cusp when on a 5. But that too, so maybe a 4s have been removed. But you can see the anatomy just between the 3-4 and the 4-4, or the premolar left and right is not the same. So I can't do more to that. Okay, back to that view. Bird's eye, prey eyes view. Canines, similar. 5, 6, 7 looks good. 6, 7, 5. I see more of this 6 than I see of that one, so that one seems to have to rotate inward. Again, I've got different anatomy. Look at the cusp of that tooth and look at the cusp of that tooth. So that detail, I think I'm going to have to be dictated by the occlusion, which is for me more important than the posterior aesthetics. If one smile, you seldom see that back teeth there. Okay, so let's roll. Roll literally and roll. That tooth there and that one is not the same. Okay. Let's look at it from the back. That cusp there. Got 2 cusps there on that 6, and I've got 3 cusps on that 6. That's what it is. Okay, so back, bird's eye view. Posterior, fine. What I slipped up, let's go back to the bird's eye view from the front. I check the posterior teeth, but I also have to check the incisors. So I check 1 on 1, 2 to 2 compare. It's difficult in this case. Over time, as I move on with my aligners, it's lots of hard work, but if I want to do my design properly, I remove my attachments and I scan a clean mouth and redesign my attachments. Now in this case I didn't do it good. You can see all the composite that's still on the tooth left, so I haven't got a clean surface to compare with a clean surface. So on the 1, 2 there's still some composite there, but let us guide ourselves. So something else that I do to look at the symmetry. Sometimes your incisal edges are worn away and you can't, your eye is just drawn to it and you can't use it. So I will drop this whole design and I'll hide the incisal edges. And I'll do that. And now I can look at the crown shape is more important than the incisal edges, because worn away tricks your eye and you want to push the tooth over because you want the incisal edges 90 degrees. So block that out and look at the mesial and the distal surfaces and the contour as it goes into the gingiva. Looking at the contour here, I've got more gingiva there, so I've got less tooth in that area exposed than in that side. So let me roll it over and see the contour of the tooth. I've got a bigger contour there. That tooth is flatter, so I can't change that. And I said that the two teeth aren't the same size, so in general, when I get here, I see more of that buccal surface than that one. So I've got a bit of a torque difference, so let's do that. Now I see more or less the same, and I see the same there. So let's take it back, front, hide it, come back. Hide it, come back. And look at this. I've got showing a little bit more of that distal contour of that lateral there than that one. So let's look at the occlusal. This one comes in more than that one. Yes, and you can see it there, but that's where I want to hide it slightly, but let's make it slightly less obvious from the front there. And let's go there. Yeah, I think that tooth is the wider one, so it's very difficult to get it perfect, 100% perfect, symmetric. So let's look at the centrals. Again, individual, I've got a much more rounded tooth on that side than that side. You can see it slopes in more generally. There I've got a much wider surface. And there I've got two lines that slightly deviate, so let me get them there and see what we have now. You see what now happens? Now that incisal edge is uneven and it's going to buck your eye. But it's easier to correct that than to fix that. So let's just get that in place. Now I've also got a more symmetry with this rounded surface here. Not as much, but it's an improvement that side. But now we've got an uneven area there. And I know this is too little to add a composite, so let's just do that. And if that bugs the patient, I can just slightly recontour that surface. Yeah, that's starting to get to look more similar. That tooth, the cusp is there, that cusp is there, there's more width. Let's have a look at it from there and from there. I'm going to accept that. Okay. Okay, so let's do the bird's eye view for the bottom. Posterior I fix, anterior I've got a slight tilt here, which is a problem for me now. So let's just check why. I've checked that out, but with the top I've got it the same. there's something there. No. Now I have to make to the bottom to be symmetric as well. So let's just go straight from the front, remove everything that distracts the eye, wrong one. Remove the interproximal stripping and let's see what's going on there. And yeah, let's get the grid back, see what bugs my eye. The 4 incisors there, the canine slightly above them. Let's get the premolars on that line there. That one is slightly higher than that one. I'd rather extrude because I want tight contacts. And the distal cusp of the 6 on that one, distal cusp of the 6. And what I see is that this 7's it's got a more of a, maybe something like that, and this one slightly more like that, and let's have a look. And I think that is maybe more symmetric. Bird's eye view for these incisors, so let's hide it, incisal edges, and let's look at the crown shapes. And let's look at the lateral to lateral, which I think I can live with. And then a lot of interproximal stripping. I've divided I very seldom strip on the mandibular incisors. They are tiny teeth. You can so much easier strip with more enamel at the back. But in this case, she's got dark triangles, and then I will strip. The centrals are the more smaller teeth, so I tend to steer away from that. That's why I've only got 0.1 right in the middle. Then between the central and the laterals, I've got 0.2, which I will do 0.1 and 0.1 on each, on the central and on the lateral. And then between the lateral and the canine, again, I've only got 0.2, and then distal to the canine, I've got 0.3, and the canine has got a lot of enamel. And then 0.2 there, which is also not a lot of stripping for the posterior teeth. So let's just get this tooth in the right place. And there's the contact sorted out from the front, bottom, and there we go. All right, bird's eye view for the bottom, from the front, posterior, anteriors. Roll it over till you get the occlusal view, and then you check it left, right, and you make sure. And your last view is from the back. Last of the bird's eye view is from the lingual side, from the sit in the patient's throat and look at the teeth and see if you've got, let's just remove the top again, roll it over and see that you've got your curve of Monson or curve of Wilson in there, and that it's the same for the left and the right, which I feel is more on this patient's right-hand side than on the left-hand side. But again, there's very difference in the occlusal anatomy. So for the time being, I'm going to leave it like that because I'm still going to have to look at the bite. Okay, so let's go back to the front, get back. Let's put the roots on. There we go. I've explained the interproximal stripping, and now I'm going to move on to my next step. So check at the teeth, bird's eye view, occlusal, frontal occlusal, and from the back. And now I'm going to look at the way the teeth fit the bite. And the only way you can do that is from the back, sitting in the throat, looking at the occlusion from the lingual side. And there I want to see that I've got the cusp of a tooth making contact on the deeper side. Now this case is hard to give you a specific or to teach you the finer points of that because I've got very hard contacts because of the open bite. So that is the type of overcorrection that I built in. But in principle, each one lands in a fossa there. I've got the canine that I actually, the front bite, the relationship from the canine to canine, I'll check from the front. But the cuspal posterior view, I'll always check the cusp from the lingual view. So let's move over to this side, and I've got cusp. Now go to that tooth's maybe the root too distal. Let's have a look at it from the side. And let's move it up slightly, creating a gap, closing it. Okay, then as I said, I'll look at my canine to canine view. I'll do from this view. And immediately I can see that canine. I like the closeness. I'm going to get a good canine disclusion there, and there I've got a problem. So I'm going to have to do something there. And then I've got quite an overjet. It seems a big overjet, but remember, this is like if you've ever scuba dived and you see this big fish coming towards you. It's a magnifying glass, the water, and this is also a magnifying glass. So it really looks intense and very big. It is not. And there's a Bolton discrepancy because I stripped in the bottom. I don't have a problem with the size of overbite because I've seen too many times a tight overbite creates a patient grinding their teeth away during function. The only problem with that is, let's just have a look and we add the contacts. I've got no contacts, so I've got nothing that's going to give me stability in terms, so those teeth are going to be prone to move because their teeth move till they touch something. So I'm going to have to plan for that in my retention phase, very important, but I'm not going to change that here. There's a discrepancy there. Let's have a look and see. The tooth needs to come slightly forward. Right. Okay, so very hard contacts at the back. Love it. Love it, love it, love it because I had an open bite. No contacts in the front. Problem solved. Have to plan my retention. This was the problem. I had to look at this canine and how am I going to fix it? I moved the upper arch and I like the way that I've the overbite on this side. This one can maybe go slightly in. This side I have to, that's too big of an overbite there from the premolar to that. I've symmetrized that, so I'm going to have to go out here to bring the canines in more close proximity. Approximation. And then bring this one slightly in. Still don't like it. I'm going to have to bring that one out. Let's see how I've changed the shape here. Contacts are good, contacts are good. That's going to have to bring this one out. Going to have to swing this one. let's check from there. Now I've got a much more symmetric flow from the size of the overbite, and I've got a much more better position there. Now I've changed that, so let's just check again. Eagle view for symmetry from the front, and I think it's still fine. Good. Bird's eye view, upper arch, front, roll it over to the occlusion, to the back. Bottom arch, bird's eye view from the front to the back, roll it over occlusion, check it from the back. Bird's eye view, individual teeth from the front, move it behind, covering the incisal edges that it doesn't trick your eye, and look at the shape of the teeth. I've done that. Now we're going to look at the attachments. To do the attachments, you have to look at the movement of all the teeth, almost each one individually. So what I do is, it's actually easier like that. For some reason, I always start with the upper arch. All of those movements on the posterior, I'm only focusing now on those teeth there. There's a bit of rotation on that one. The rest of it is torque changes from for the posterior upper, the first quadrant is torque changes. For that, I don't always use attachments. I'd rather extend my cut line, and I go for a harder material, more rigid. So let's see that premolar rotation. There is rotation, but it happens over a distance, and it's not that much. We can also check it on the tooth movement table. Rotation would be, this one is 0.2, which is very much within the limits. So I'm not going to, at this stage, I don't feel like doing attachments. I'll keep it in mind. This side, purely torque changes. That height change comes from the change in the torque. So the upper teeth attachments at this stage hangs in the balance. I'll see what I'm going to do. But let's just see what we've planned there, what they've planned. Okay, so those attachments does help for the type of movement. From there, bringing it down. But in my view, not much, because you've got quite a big crown surface, you've got a rigid material, you've got a good fit at the gingiva, and doing attachment at the back on the 7 and the 6, personally I find it like the bracket on the molar. You can do it, but to get it 100% and for it not to come off, I'd rather have a perfect fit of the aligner on the tooth surface. But on the other hand, I want retention, so I'll keep the 6. Let's see the amount of rotation on these teeth. Let's go to the final. I really feel that this, I can get away with an attachment there. That's personal, but that's my choice. I'm going to remove that. Let's see that canine. From there, very little rotation. And it's over a long period and a lot of aligners to get there. Again, I am going to remove that attachment. Attachments on upper laterals and mandibular incisors. Upper laterals is a must. If you move anything on the upper lateral incisor, small, not a lot of root or not a lot of aligner material pushing on the teeth. Let me put it this way. Any treatment, if you move the maxillary lateral incisor, add an attachment. Just be safe. Add an attachment. In the mandibular, any movement of the mandibular incisors, even tinier teeth, huge root surface in comparison to the crown surface. If you do mesiodistal movement over a short distance and they move in mass, then it's not much needed. But the moment you start moving the root, and the shorter the distance the crown are going to move, add your attachments. Okay, let's go back here. Bottom. Okay, there are attachments on them currently for extrusion. Let's see what movements we've got. That movement there is power chain closing the gap, so I'm only going to go to 12. So the movement up to 12, actually that's only 9 aligners, so let's see what happens. That one has got a slight root movement and the crown hardly moves, so that tooth gonna need an attachment if I want that movement to happen. So let's see what's going to happen if I make it unmovable. If that movement doesn't play out, that's the in position that's going to be. It's going to be slightly out, so there is a bit of extrusion on it. So let's get it back. So I am going to change that attachment. Tooth 3, 2. Please remove attachment and add a vertical one for root moving to the distal, or for distal root movement, whatever. Yeah. Maybe on that one as well, I'm not going to do an attachment there. Do I need those attachments? Very practical thing comes now into play. In the clinic, time is limited. I know I said I remove all the attachments. I didn't do it in this case. I knew I'm going to do attachments at the back for extrusion, so I removed everything at the back. But I left the front ones, thinking that I'm going to need attachments again, and they're not too bad. But now I'm going to have to remove them and add all these attachments. So for the moment, I'm just going to replace that one. Don't create that additional work for me. An aligner fitting over an attachment that's already there is made to fit very, very good, and it gives me a little bit of control. So I'm going to leave that. So now we're looking at the back teeth, and that's my critical teeth, my bite that I need to close. Goodness, and there's a lot of extrusion. There's root movements on, I'm looking at the 3-3 now. If I look at all the roots from the 7, 6, 5, 4, and I look at the beginning where we are, let's get the green there as well. And we move, the canine root moves a lot. There's a bit of distal root movement, but it's really, really little. That 5 is just straight up. Let's see where that canine go. Very slight distal movement. It's much more a lingual movement then. So I'm more going to focus on extrusion, which I need canine through to 7, and the same on this side. A lot of extrusion on that premolar and the 6, and a lot on that 7. So this is a tricky one. And I did extrusion in the previous one, or I planned extrusion, and it didn't happen. So I'm going to have to be very careful what I'm doing here to make this happen. But before I finalize my attachments there, I'm going to look at the occlusion and the hardness of the contacts, because I don't want to plan this and then I'm still going to change this. So let's go back and review that contacts. Everything flows into one another. You can't really separate them and say, finish this, finish this, finish that. Because as you start moving teeth, all of those different aspects change, and you try to go back and solve it again, but it changed. So always go back. I'm repeating myself. Have your plan of how you review. Bird's eye view from the front, checking the posterior teeth, roll over to the occlusion and check from behind into it from the palatal view. And then check your front teeth, symmetry 1 to 1, 2 to 2, or 1 to 1 in the bottom, 2 to 2. Posterior, roll over occlusion, do it from the back. But when you go on and you start looking, for instance, at your hardness of your contacts, you're changing the tooth positions and you're going to have to go back there. So don't always just stay in your 1 steps. That's a broad categorization. But you have to go back every time at a certain view depending on how much you have changed. That's it. So I did look at the attachments. These are extrusion attachments. I haven't had much success, as much as I would like to. I want to push the limits. I want to have more predictability on my extrusion than you get in the research. And currently I don't feel I get it. So I have to change something that I'm doing. But before I do this, I know firstly extrusion is compromised. Not compromised is a difficult movement. So I did that. Let's see, I've changed a lot. Let's have a look at the amount of contacts, beginning to end. Let's get it and let it stay there. There's more. Can I get more there? What is the height? I can't really extrude it more, then I'm going to have a marginal ridge discrepancy. I'm actually going to have to intrude. So let's see the top. Also, yes, I can maybe extrude a bit here and get more contacts. That's too much, my computer is slow. Let's change that movement. Now I've got it more similar, much more similar in pattern and distribution. So, and that's really hard contacts. I can maybe, because of the fact that she don't want her upper incisors to be prominent and to get, I'm very far out of contact there, so I'm going to bring them much closer. The bottom ones, bring them up. By doing so, I have to have a view again of my contacts. And now I've got to change this. I'm going to have to 01. Wrong movement. And now I'm changing the mesiodistal position of these teeth. So I'm going to have a look at the occlusion again from the palatal view. And I've got a 0.1 and I've got a 0.2. I've got 0.3 here. I don't like that. Affect one, then the other gets affected. Change one, the other, it affects the other. Looking at that, maybe bring that one slightly down. I want to close these dark triangles for her. She don't like it, and I wouldn't like it myself. Okay, so I've changed the mesiodistal position. I'm going to have to check that's still fine. go 1, 2, 2, 2, and I've got a 3, and I've got a 1 and a 1, and I've got a space there. Let's close it. Okay, so I've got a 1, 2, 3, 1. I've got a 1, 2, 2, 1. I'm going to get rid of that 3, but I need to get more here. And I can improve the occlusion, so I'm going to take it more, close that, make it 1, 2, 3, 2, 2. Let's just get this one right. Two, 2. So it's 1, 2, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2, 2. Yeah. One, 2, 2, 2. 1, 2, 2, 2, and close that space. Now it's going to change again because I saw that my got a slightly bigger overjet on that canine than that one, but let's see. Yeah, I would like to. That one comes in more than that one. Let me just double check on that. Now it starts looking so much better. Occlusal contacts, similar, love that. Let's go to the 1, 2, 2. I'm not going to change that because I want that contact or canine exclusion there. Okay. Now the problem is something happened here, which is now again going to affect everything. Okay, that's still fine. I've got less of an overbite on the distal surface of that lateral than I've got there. So it's a much more tight situation here. I don't like that. But I've checked the symmetry, so it's a bottom one that I've changed too much. So we're back there. It creates a proprioceptive awareness. Some patients won't pick it up. Some patients will come back and tell you, but my bite is not right. It's not the same. Good. So let's just check the contacts again, so important. Good. Now we're going to move on. Bird's eye view, we've done that. Then it's the occlusion from the lingual that I bit part of my bird's eye view. Attachments, we looked at it. The top I was happy, the bottom we have to address. And then it's the occlusion, which we did now. Now I have to get the attachments to come to do what I want with my occlusal contacts. And that's my concern. That's really, really my concern. In this case and other cases, especially in the bottom, and I want to show you what happens. They add these extrusion attachments. Now I have said aligners push. Wires pull, aligners push. Always remember that. And the biggest force comes from the force on a 90 degree on the angle. On the attachment's surface, 90 degree, that's your biggest force. There's also a force, but you get a vector of forces. It breaks down. So I try to look at it where I get my biggest forces, what is going to happen with that tooth. And if we look at these back teeth here, and we take, for instance, this attachment here, and the aligner push there, what's going to happen? That tooth is just going to move inside. And that's why I feel that attachments, extrusion attachments, the normal extrusion attachments on the bottom doesn't work. Same with that premolar there, the same with that canine. There's the molar there. 90 degrees on that one, slight extrusion, but mainly a lingual tipping. And is that where I want to go? I don't think so. I want to go mostly, there's a slight movement in, but mostly I want to go extrude. So what I am going to do is I'm going to write a lot of notes here for these guys. And we can do a next part on this where I get the changes back. So let's just look, check this canine out. It is slightly in, mostly up. So from the canine to the molar there, and the same on this side, from the canine to the molar. I need purely extrusion, vertical extrusion. This case has got 20 aligners. Something what's important is when you do aligner cases, know your product. There are differences between the main brands, the international brands, and the local brands. And for management purposes of the financial side, you want to pay less and make maximum use of the aligners that you get. This is a 20 aligner case. I'm currently only using 9, so I've got 11 aligners to play with to get more predictability. And that's now what I'm going to build into this. I'm going to ask them, firstly, remove the attachments on 3.2. I did that. Change attachment and add a vertical one for root moving for distal root moving. Let's just distal root movement. Okay. What I'm going to do is to say, to get extrusion, I've got 11 extra aligners, and I'm going to try and build in predictability with, at the moment they're using 9. That's less than the amount that I've got. So I'm going to make the movement over a slower period. I'm going to frog stage it, only move certain teeth at a certain time. And I'm going to make use of what they call the dull effect. Bring one tooth into contact, remove the attachments on the others, and actually increase their movement radically so that I can get an aligner with free space in the showing, and then the teeth moving by themselves, erupting into that space, and not being hindered by attachments or friction caused by attachments. So how are we going to write this down? Remove all posterior attachments from canine to molars in the mandible. Frog stage extrusion. And do the first molars at the normal rate with normal horizontal attachments. And I can play with that, and I can change the angulation and get a better grip and literally force them out. That's what I'm going to try and do. Right, with normal horizontal attachments. So let's see, at this stage they are using 9 aligners to bring that molar into position. Frog stage extrusion and do the first molars extrusion in the mandible. And do the first molars at the normal rate with horizontal attachments. Use stage 1 to 9 for that. During these stages, no attachments on the canine, premolar or second molar. Keep the second molar where it is, where they are, but move, extrude the premolar and canine at double the default no attachments, just add it again, although I said no attachments. So I'm going to aim at extruding the molars literally with attachments, and as they go up I'm going to allow free space for the premolar and the canine to erupt into by themselves, being guided by the aligner on the both sides, lingual and buccally, and see how they move into it themselves. But the molar I'm going to extrude up, and I'm going to keep the 7 as my contact point that the others can move. But now I have to check where do I have my current contact to see if it's viable. I currently have contact. Let's just go to the contact is slightly on the 7 there, on the 7 there. So to verify if that is going to work, I am going to unmovable, okay, unmovable, so it's back to its original position, and see how quickly I can get them to become my stable points. So let's see. Let's go 1. As I extrude, this premolar is going to come into contact, and I can't ask for double the amount because, although I don't know how long it's going to take to erupt, so I'm going to ask them delay. First extrude the molars. Use stage 1 to 9 for frog staging of the mandibular first molars. During stage 1 to 5. No movement on the canine premolar or second molar. So then by stage number 5, so I'm going to have to unmovable here, unmovable, unmovable, okay, unmovable, okay. So let's see what happens now. Go back. Stage 1 to 5. But I made this unmovable as well. Why is it now moving? It's the upper one that's coming down. Well, that's fine. I want a contact on the 7. So I'm going to have a good contact there. That one comes into play. Although it looks as if the 6s are in hardened play, they're not going to be caught because they don't really come that well. But up to stage 5. If we carry on from there, they'll be coming into really hard play. What I am going to do is let's first just do a recalculation, yeah, and see. Real time failed. Okay. We'll do that again, try again. They said we can. So let's go to stage 5. Starting to get a contact there, contact there. Okay. During stages 1 to 5, no movement canine premolars or second molars. And then stage 5 to 10, start extruding the premolar and canine but without attachments. Now I'm just going back to the fact that I want to extrude the first molar with an attachment, but I think I'm going to have to make use of anchorage on the 7s, which I'm not moving at all. And do the first molars at a normal rate with horizontal attachments on 3, 6, 3, 7, and 4, 6, 4, 7. During stage 1 to 5, don't move on the premolars or second molars. Okay, so first 5 stages, only extrusion of the 6s, anchoring on the 7s. Then 5 to 9, extrusion of the canines and the premolars, canine and premolar, but we're using the dull effect. And then I'm at number 9. And then I'm going to it's difficult with a supplier that the design is not in my hand. Now again, you have to know the rules of each company. This company don't make more than 3 clean aligners at the end of your treatment to retain your teeth there. So I'm going to have to ask them to at stage 9. I'll have to see if they're going to allow me. Stage 5 to 10, 5 to 9, let's make that 10, that is the same. And then after stage 10, stage 11 to 15. Extrude the 3, 7 and 4, 7. It's a terminal tooth. It's a difficult movement, so I'm going to ask them extrude after stage 10. So 11 to 15, I'm going to use 5 aligners, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, to extrude the second molars. My anchorage is going to be then keep the 6s where they are. No movement on the first molars. So that's part of the frog stage. Then I'm at stage 15. I've got 5 left. I have to use 3 for my elastics to close all the gaps. So I've got actually 2 left. And I'm going to add 5 stage 1 stage, 11 to 15, extrude 3, 7 and 4, 7. No movement on the first molars, but keep extrusion, keep on going with the extrusion of the canine and premolars in the dull fashion without attachments. This is going to be an interesting case to see what happens. Attachments. The implication is that extrusion of the canines and premolars happens from stage, let's just see, from stage 5 through to 15. So it's 10 aligners, no attachments. Then add the 3 virtual power chain stages, followed by 2 final aligners to stabilize before ending on 20. There we go. Let's go to the final. Okay, so I made these unmovable. Now I'm going to bring them back into movement, movement, and that is going to be this one doesn't want to play along. I think my computer slowed down because of the size of the filming of this session at the background. So really nothing is happening now, so let's see. It's unmovable. That helps. Let's get it into place. Let's just check the one, 2, 2, 1, 3. Why did this happen? 2. One, 2, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, and 0, and bring that tooth into position. There we go. Good. 1, 2, 2, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, and contacts. This one is not good enough. Nice and solid. Totally overcorrected. Good. Let's see if it is going to recalculate. Otherwise, I'm going to submit it anyway.